Hello and welcome to Raising the Barr, the go-to podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs looking to elevate their marketing game. Today, we've got a fantastic guest for you. He was a college high jump champion in the United States before injury derailed his career. He bounced back to build a global coaching success of a business, and now he's back at the athletics again, going for the Olympics in 4 years' time in LA. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephan Duvivier.
Jamie, thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us. So, Stefan, I'm really interested to dive into how you're helping entrepreneurs and athletes across the world achieve their full potential with your business, Mind My Movement. But before we do that, we've got to hear this story. Fill us in on the journey so far.
Yeah, so basically, like you said, I was a lifelong athlete, started with basketball, and then my track coach in high school was like, hey, come here for a sec, try this out. And he brought me to the high jump mats. I wasn't really that good, but I guess I was the best thing that my high school had. And then from there, it was history. I mean, got better in high school, just went along the whole journey of optimizing my body, training the right way, and ended up going to States, getting a scholarship for college. And then from there, like you said, won a national championship in college. As you said, the injuries were just tough, man. Like, everything was great until I had something pop up. I had the hamstring strains, the ankle sprains, the sports hernia, which required surgery. All these things just culminated to me not being able to excel the way that I wanted to in athletics. And at a certain point, it was just like, man, like, this can't be it. This can't be how the body is set up. I just refused to believe that injuries and pain and all that were part of the game or part of getting older, everything how people usually say. So it just led me to be on this path of optimizing the body, optimizing the mind, to essentially not only kind of bulletproof the body for athleticism, but also to serve as a gateway to an enhanced way of living life.
Unbelievable. So for our listeners, obviously outside the US, I don't think they understand quite how big college sport is in the United States. We're talking American football, 100,000 people at games?
Yeah.
The level of competition there is unbelievable.
Yeah.
You mentioned there about the combination between the mind and the body. What was the mental effects on you when your athletics career came to an end? You got these hopes, these dreams. What position were you in after that?
It was tough. It was really depressing. And I think I also had a lot of pent-up anxiety because I realized as an athlete, I was essentially going to do sports not only because I was good at them, but because it was a mental release. It was a place for me to just forget about school, forget about parents, forget about bad relationships, and just really lock in and get into a focused zone in the field of play. And I found that when I didn't have that, it was just didn't feel good mentally. Like the anxiety, the depression, just an imbalance of emotions overall. And I find that a lot of other athletes suffer from the same thing when they're not able to play their sport or just perform in their craft the way that they want to.
100%. I mean, we look at sports across the world, and there's so many stories of athletes, sports people getting released at that young age. And unfortunately, their lives tend to deteriorate down a pretty bad path. How did you go from that point where you sat on the sofa, feeling sorry for yourself, injured, not knowing where to go? What sparked that light bulb moment in your head for your business?
Yeah, well, I've always been really into longevity and the way that the human body functions and works. Like, I always remember I used to watch the Discovery Channel all the time. There was this show that was basically documenting surgeries, and I would watch that all the time. It just fascinated me to see how they would like stitch things together and like open things up, take things out. So it was just really cool to see that, and it also led to me having this tremendous fascination with the human body. And so since then, I was always working on optimizing myself, optimizing the way that I function, from my breathing to the way that obviously my muscles function and things like this, my posture. And it just became a passion of mine. So when I had all these injuries come up, again, it was like, I know this isn't normal. I know there's something that I can do beyond just medications and surgeries and all these things to get to the root of the problem and solve it for good and not have to succumb to all these injuries and all these issues.
And what are your views on this medication versus prevention idea? Because I know in the United States, they're dishing out medicine for pretty much everything, aren't they?
Yeah, man. It's a quick fix world, not only in America, but I think across the globe with technology. I think that people are using it as a crutch instead of using it as a way to advance ourselves and really get ahead. It's a way to fill these gaps that we have in our inherent function. And the thing is that people aren't taught how to function their bodies, how they're supposed to work. There's no instruction manual, right? It's the same thing with business. People don't just learn business all of a sudden. You don't just start business and make $1 million a year right from the get-go. You have to actually learn the skills that are going to allow you to get that output out of your business. And it's the same exact thing with your body. People don't take the time to understand how we breathe properly, how we're supposed to even just sit properly, or relax our bodies properly. Things like that sound so simple, but it's at the end of the day what allows you to have a better experience within your vessel and perform better in the real world as a result.
100%. I mean, a lot of it comes back to education. It's that argument of, are we teaching the right things in schools? We're teaching algebra, we're not teaching people about mortgages, banking systems in the same way in physical education classes.
Same thing. We're teaching people how to do all these push-ups, squats. If people are even doing it, a lot of people, like in America at least, a lot of people aren't even doing physical education anymore. Yeah. It's not becoming, or it hasn't been a requirement for the last few years. It's starting to trend in that direction. So it's like, if people are even doing that stuff, focusing on fitness, they're not focusing on the deeper aspects of how their body works.
Yeah, perfect. So you've sat there with the injury. You obviously started to look at the ways in which to improve your own body, improve your own mind. When did you start to get the idea that not only could you help yourself, but you could help other people as well?
Yeah, so I guess it was after college. I was pre-med in school in undergrad, and it just wasn't for me. Because by the end of around my senior year, I was just getting to a place where I was sick of school. I was sick of going to classes, learning about these things that I didn't have it just didn't feel like I had any practical application with them. So that mixed with the fact that I started seeing the shortcomings of the medical field, seeing the shortcomings of that industry at large, the health industry. I just didn't want to go to school for another 4 to 12 years before I was able to make impact in the world. So I graduated, knew no idea what I was going to do, what job I was going to have. And I was watching people around me. They were either going to med school or they were taking these 9-to-5 jobs, and that just wasn't for me. So I didn't know what to do, but I just kind of threw myself into the world. I started personal training because that was the biggest passion that I had besides like actually doing sports. And that was okay, but I was living in New York City at the time, and I found myself traveling for 45 minutes to an hour sometimes to get to clients. Or if I had a gym that was local that I wanted to train people at, I would have to pay half of my fees, sometimes more, to be able to take those clients in there and work in that gym. So it just wasn't sustainable to me. It was just like, again, like there needs to be a better way. And I don't know, one thing led to the next. I probably saw some social media ad that said, make money online. And I started seeing that you could actually make a living off of this online stuff. So I just started charging friends, people I went to school with, acquaintances. I was doing, I think, like $300 a month for fitness coaching. So I would just teach them the things that I was working on, teach them how to start basically relieving their pain, relieving their tightness, and just get back to a better level of performance.
Yeah. I bet your family loved that when you said you were going to drop out of med school and head off with no idea.
I mean, man, my mom, I will say in retrospect, she was pretty supportive through the process. Yeah. She wasn't like, oh, you got to do this or you got to do that. But she definitely was worried. I couldn't say she was completely chill with it. But yeah, she was supportive in her own way. She always just wanted me to make sure that I was confident and I had a real vision. And I didn't in the beginning, which is probably why she tried to intervene a lot and tell me like, hey, Steph, why don't you just get a job? Why don't you just do this part-time and then do the business on the side with your extra hours and stuff like that? But I was just like, no, like I got to go all in with this. I got to really like figure this out, because any part-time job is just going to take me away from what I really want to do long term. Yeah.
So when did you start doing the online coaching? What year was that in?
That was 2018.
2018. So you've gone from 2018, charging a few friends, making a few $100s a month, to obviously scale it 6 years later in this massive position you're now in.
Yes, sir.
The online coaching industry, it's got to be one of the most competitive industries in the world, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone's popping up. Everyone's doing it. How did you set about creating a service, a product, an offering that was fundamentally different to the masses?
Yeah, I think for me, it was easy because I really heavily relied on my story and the transformation that I went about. And because I don't think my transformation is very common, where you go from this place of being chronically injured, go from this place of just not feeling like your body is operating the way that it should to be able to perform the way that you want it to then optimizing my mind, optimizing my body in this way to actually completely reverse the pain and all those issues. And then also on the other end of that, get back to a level of performance that I've never experienced before. So just relying on that story and the methods that I use to get to that transformation has been invaluable for how we've been able to build the brand and how we've been able to sell what we have.
Yeah. And with the knowledge you've now got, those chronic injuries, recurring injuries, do you think they were avoidable? Were they something, was it to do with a lack of knowledge? Was it to do with things that happened in your upbringing? Was it to do with a lack of nutrition, a lack of taking care of yourself?
There's definitely a lot of variables here. I think it ultimately comes down to a lack of education, as we spoke about before, because I was taking care of myself pretty well. I was always following whatever my coaches had to say. But I think the issue is that we as athletes just want to blindly follow the structure that's given forth for us. But at the end of the day, if your coach doesn't really know, then how can the structure he provides for you give you the chance to be successful? So I had good coaches, but I think there are just holes in the system, in the athletic system, that, again, don't really allow for longevity, especially in the States. It's all about performance. Like, how much can we squeeze out of this individual athlete, as opposed to how long can this athlete actually compete for? What is their longevity going to be like if I give them this kind of training? There's no real long-term thinking. It's always in the span of 4 years, because, and it's no disrespect or anything to the coaches. I don't think it's their fault. I think it's the system, because the system at the end of the day is going to reward them for performances within that 4-year span. So they're going to do everything they can to squeeze as much performance out of you for the success in their career. And it just is how it is,
I think that's really coming to light with the current Olympics as well. There's more and more stories coming out about bad coaching, unethical coaching, people really being, their bodies, but also their minds, just being pushed past the limit of what's acceptable for someone of their age.
Sure.
And like you said, you cannot achieve long-term success doing that. So we spoke about the storytelling. You had this amazing story. You wanted to communicate your own story. How did you first set about putting that out there to the world, communicating it to your audience?
Yeah, the first thing was Instagram. Yeah. So I just had a personal Instagram. Actually, the Instagram I have now that I grew is still the personal Instagram that I had in high school and college.
Yeah. And I love that Instagram name, Air Duvet.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. So, started on Instagram. I was at a couple thousand followers just between friends and acquaintances and all that. But I was just posting what I was doing. I was literally just training a certain way, just living a certain kind of lifestyle with my habits and everything. And people found it really, really interesting, because it wasn't anything, over the top or anything, but it was just little things like, hey, I'm focusing on breathing light as I'm doing these sprints, or I'm focusing on how my spine is aligned as I'm doing this bench press. And just really little things like that were really fascinating to people. And I think that the way that I articulated it over time has, gotten better and better, because in the beginning, I was saying these things, I think, in a way that was really complex and harder to understand. But over the years, I've been able to simplify that message, still give a deeper kind of understanding of everything, but making sure that it's in a way that can be digestible for people. And even if they can't understand what I'm saying with the more complex language, they're still able to basically just consume it easier, without having to like stress about like, oh, what does this word mean? Or,
Exactly. People need it communicated in those small bite-sized chunks they can
Exactly.
understand. So building a social media following, it's becoming notoriously more and more difficult. Like you said, you started out on a couple of thousand, you're now on nearly a couple of 100,000, aren't you?
Yeah.
What do you think's made people buy into you, buy into the brand that they maybe haven't with other people?
That's a good question. I really think it's because this way of training and just living that I promote it just works. I think at the end of the day, people are looking for results. And even in my free content with these little tidbits that I give people and these strategies for training and for approaching their day-to-day lifestyle, I think that they really provide people with longer term results that they're not getting from the average guy on Instagram who's promoting a quick 5 exercises to get rid of your knee pain or do these things to get rid of your back pain. Like, what I promote is just more holistic, I think, and it just really covers more bases than your average Instagram influencer.
Yeah. And how do you balance up across social media? You've obviously, like you said, you've got those bite-sized chunks of what you're doing, what's working for you, what's going to work for other people. How do you communicate yourself, your own personality? Do you include your personal life? How do you balance giving people a feel of what Stefan is?
Sure, yeah, and that's been a work in progress for sure. But I think that it's really just being myself. The more I've been myself over the years, the more that people have learned to trust me, honestly, and just buy from me. Because I think that ultimately the way that brands are, and you'll know this, but the way that we're kind of going as a society, brands are so important to create this personalized view with. And a lot of people just really respect that in terms of like being able to actually relate to somebody that looks like them or looks like them and things like that.
So I think we've done a little bit of a 360 in some ways because people always bought from people. If we look at the olden days, or not even that old, but you'd go down to your local town, buy from the guy you knew him, you trusted him. There was a period where people seemed to be doing a lot of purchasing with these big faceless corporations. But now I think across social media and that, people are going back to wanting to see the faces who they're buying from. They want to understand their stories. People want to know the products are ethical. They want to know the background behind them. And it's a really interesting piece on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's dig into the online coaching world.
Let's do it.
We talked there about the free downloadable content. It's a great thing to put out there. At the end of the day, we've all got to make a living as well.
Yeah.
How does the monetization of online coaching work? How do you go about that?
Yeah, so basically our package is a 12-week coaching program. It's $5,200. And essentially, I can explain our funnel if you want.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. So basically, like I said, top of funnel, we mostly rely on organic Instagram marketing right now. So we are working on paid ads as well. That's something that's a little bit newer and we're not really relying on because it's still in the works. And, with paid ads, it takes some time to build that up. But yeah, organic has been our bread and butter for a while. So basically somebody will come into the page, whether it be because of a viral post or whatever other niche kind of reel. And the algorithm these days is really good at pushing that niche content. So if you just are very specific with your language, very specific with who you want to be reaching and the problems that you solve, then people are automatically going to see that. If they're on Instagram, they're going to see that. The algorithm is eventually going to push it to them. So going back to what I was saying, if they see one of those posts, they'll come into the ecosystem, hopefully follow us. And then from there, they'll engage with my content. We'll have multiple call to actions out, whether it's to go book a call at our link in bio or to go watch some YouTubes or to DM us a certain keyword. And then from there, we have setters in my inbox who are essentially messaging these people, asking them about their goals, asking them about what they want to achieve, things like this, their problems. And then if they're a good fit, then we'll take them onto a call. We'll have our advisor speak to them, just assess their situation, assess their training approach currently, what they've done that works, what they've done that doesn't work. And then we'll sign them on. And then from there, it's off to delivery. And then we'll take them through that 12-week coaching program after a bit of an assessment. We'll communicate with them all throughout, continually assess them to make sure they're on the right track, and obviously give them a personalized plan for them to follow to get the results that they want.
Yeah. I think that's the main, for anyone online, selling courses in any industry, people try and hook people in straight away on those big ticket offerings. You've got to put them through the funnel, free content, subscribe, then onto a smaller package. And then the end part of it is the big win with that package, because people have to know you. They have to know the business. There's got to be that trust in order to make that high ticket item.
Definitely. And we've been working on decreasing that time for somebody to trust us. So basically from the time they come into the funnel to the time that they will pay us money, we've been doing our best to decrease that. And it's a process for sure. It's something that I think can be worked on. But ultimately, like you said, there has to be that time. There has to be that time that they're in the funnel, they're watching your content, they get exposed to you. I mean, there's like some guy, I forget his name, but he wrote a book about like the 7-hour rule, about how somebody needs to consume 7 hours of your content before they're ready to buy. So yeah, it's just really pumping out the content, making sure it's engaging enough for the right type of person that they're going to watch, they're going to sit there and commit that 7 hours eventually over time.
So in order to reduce that time in the funnel, it's literally just about producing more content at a high quality.
High quality is the main thing. And then once you have the high quality, you double back and go to the volume. That's the approach that we've taken. I mean, I was posting to grow from 3,000 followers to 100,000 followers. I did that actually in less than a year. But to do that, it was just a post a day, a post a day, a post a day. Doing that consistently, literally every day, I would sit down, work on the post, work on the script, film it. If it didn't come out good, film it again. Didn't come out good, film it again. Okay, now it's proper. Send it off to the editor, So it was really meticulous. But now that I've gotten the quality down, at least to a decent place, now we're at 3 a day on just Instagram alone, just straight 3 reels every single day, just posting. So yeah, it's definitely grown from just that quality piece to now let's get in front of people more so that they see me on their algorithm more, and they have a higher chance of seeing me more too as well because I'm posting more.
Yeah. So 97,000 followers in a year.
Yeah.
Unbelievable for organic growth.
Yeah.
It's wild. So when you first started out, you've got your iPhone, I imagine, you sat at home filming that 1 reel a day, you've got the time to give to it. Now you're traveling the world, you're coaching, it's a rapidly growing business. Have you had to build out a team around you to film that content? How does that work now, the production process?
Funny enough, no, it's still, we haven't built out too much of a team. We're actually just starting to do that, building out the organic side of things a little bit more, because the way that I see it, I want to put out content, number one, that's really... it's really raw. It's really natural, because what I find is that when it's too dressed up, sometimes people can't relate to it as well, or sometimes people just don't really see it in the same light as they would if it was just a natural like iPhone selfie kind of video, So I've been trying my best actually to keep it really simple. I mean, we have edits on it and things like this, but I think that what I found is that the more edited something is, the more it actually takes away from the actual message. And don't get me wrong, we clean things up and like try and make sure lighting is good and things like that. But I think the simpler, the better. So we've just been honestly like just writing scripts, just kind of repurposing some old things from the past that did really well, and just making sure we continue to iterate on the same things. And that's what saves me a lot of time, is because I'm not always trying to recreate the wheel. I find a lot of people when they do content is that they'll try and put out like all these very unique pieces of content. But if you just put a slight twist on something that was posted 6 months ago, and even sometimes just repost the same exact piece, no additional changes from like 6, 7, 8 months ago, you can still get a lot of engagement on that post is what I've seen. So yeah, it's just really being efficient in that way, not thinking that we have to recreate the wheel and just kind of repurposing things from the past.
Yeah, I think an analogy I always use for that is when people are trying to create new content. Like you look at, let's take Rolls-Royce, for example. when they release a new model, it's not a complete differentiation of the last car. When Range Rover bring out a new one, it's just a small evolution. But like you said, they're not reinventing the wheel. People chop and change so much, their audience become confused.
Yeah, because if you have a good message, then you don't need to change it. And I found myself through this process sometimes changing my message a little bit, kind of getting away from the basics. And every time I find myself doing that, I mean, it's like meditation. If any of the viewers know about that, it's like once your focus gets away from the point of focus, then you just gently bring it back. And that's the same thing in business and in content creation, at least that I found, is that when I lose focus on the main message, the main ideal avatar, it's just, you just got to bring it back.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And your main focus has been on Instagram there. Has there been much adoption of other channels like YouTube?
Yeah, so YouTube we're definitely starting to get onto, but we're really more so using it as a supplementation to Instagram. So, okay, somebody wants to learn a little bit more. Somebody has the desire to actually like go deeper on these topics. Then we'll direct them to the YouTube. Otherwise, we haven't really gone crazy with the YouTube production and all that. And you know how YouTube is a little bit more of a challenging platform. You got to have some very specific things in place in order for it to reach organic audience. So we haven't gone too crazy with that. That's definitely something that I plan to do in the very near future. And then TikTok, we really just repost the same Instagram pieces to TikTok. So my approach, honestly, and we've still been seeing good amount of growth from just focusing on this one thing, is just focusing on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think that people oftentimes get drawn thin by trying to figure out each and every individual platform when they just have so much juice to squeeze out of that one platform. And that's the same approach that we've taken. It's just like, yeah, just hone in on the basics, get it right.
Yeah. I think with anything in life, you can be the best at one thing. It's like that jack of all trades, isn't it? You don't want to be all right on everything. It's better to concentrate on one and be unbelievable.
Yeah.
So we talked about social media, acquiring the clients. In terms of the delivery of the courses over that 12-week period, how does that work?
Yeah, so basically what we do is we'll take them through an assessment. So we'll take a look at somebody's posture. We'll take a look at somebody's movement mechanics, taking them through different kinds of movements to just assess like their proficiency in them. And then from there, we'll create a personalized program for them. And the beauty is that when you get your ideal client specified to a very clear level, to a very clear person, then you don't have to do so much work on the delivery side in terms of personalizing these programs. Because if everybody who comes in is somebody with a with an athletic background, somebody who has specific types of pain, somebody who is really already understanding of a lot of these training principles and fitness principles that we're going to work on, but they just need these slight tweaks. If somebody comes in like that, then we really don't have to do too much to change our kind of standard program to get them really good results. And that's why it's so important, top of funnel, that going back to what I was saying, you stay focused. You stay focused on who exactly you're serving, because then what we find is that you go to the end of the funnel, then you're going to get people who don't really fit, that drip out. And it just is a big strain on delivery. So yeah, other than the program, we'll basically have 24/7, more like 12/5 support for them. And being able to answer their questions, review their form when they want some just feedback on how they're doing these exercises and things like that. Obviously adjusting their program as need be. Like if something's a little bit too strenuous on their body or they have too much load, too much volume, then we'll just decrease the number of sets, decrease, the number of workouts that they have in a week. And yeah, we'll just continually adjust their program because obviously the body adapts when it has this changing stimulus on it. So we'll just have this dynamic trend of changing their program based on what they present with, how their body is adapting and things like that.
Amazing. And what does a success story look like
Yeah, so a success story goes from at the beginning, they're in pain, they have these chronic injuries, they're probably still playing their sport, but they just don't have that same quick first step that they did when they were, in their 20s or when they were maybe 10 years old, younger. They don't really have that same energy that they used to have when they were maybe an athlete in college or they played some kind of sports in high school. They're still doing recreational sports, but they just don't have that same oomph, that same bounce or quickness that they had before. And they go from that to erasing their pain, being able to do whatever activities they want, whether it be hiking, it be mountain biking, it be recreational basketball leagues, football, whatever it is. They're able to do all those things without having to worry, is my body going to hold up? Am I going to wake up tomorrow and feel like I got hit by a truck? They can do those activities. They don't have to skip out on them because their body is resilient, because they actually built the right connections through their chain to be able to do these things sustainably over time. And we always say the best success story, obviously I've only been doing this for a few years, so we don't have this long-term case study yet, but I want my clients to be able to dunk on their grandkids when they're 60. That's my goal.
I mean, that's the main thing. So we've touched on that. You're obviously working with athletes of all ability, through from the recreational to those professional athletes. You're in this unique position now of not only being an athlete, but also being a business owner and entrepreneur. Where do you feel that these key areas of, your body, your mind, these services you're offering can benefit entrepreneurs in their business growth? Oh,
tremendously. I think that your body is the vehicle through which, number one, you experience life. Like just your experience of life is going to change based on the health and vitality that's within your body. And then number two, it's going to influence your ability to perform. I mean, if you have like leaky gut, your digestion sucks, you're bloated all the time, that's going to take away from your brain processing. If your breathing patterns are off, if you're not really able to get oxygen, like sure, you're breathing, but because you're not breathing the most optimal way, you're not truly oxygenating your tissues, and one of them being your brain, which is obviously very important for an entrepreneur. So it's just really these little functions in the body that people oftentimes miss out on or just overlook that are really going to provide so many benefits to anybody, whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, even if you're just, your typical 9-to-5er. If you just want to feel better, be happier, in a better mental and emotional state, you need to figure out your body.
And when you look at entrepreneurs, but people in general, I feel people become focused on one very specific area. So, for example, we'll take Executive A. He has a PT 3 times a week, lifts weights. Mm-hmm. You've got the other guy who goes to High Rocks 5 times a week, just does High Rocks. You've got the other guy who just plays tennis. Then there's another person who concentrates on the meditation and yoga. Mm. Your view there is that there needs to be a more holistic approach where you bring it in everything in one sort of formula?
There needs to be a more holistic approach in the sense that everything comes from your internal understanding of yourself. And that might sound a little bit woo-woo. So what I mean by that is just bringing attention to things like how your, essentially like how your core is engaged, how your hips are working, how, like I said before, your breathing, your spine is aligned. All these things transfer to anything in life, whether it's just me sitting here talking to you or it's me actually going to play basketball. So all these things influence the way that you're going to perform, whether it's the articulation of my words, it's how sharp I am as I'm answering your questions, or anything like even just the level of comfort that I have in my body. It's going to be related to my posture, my breathing, and just my overall ability to control the state in my body. So it's just tremendously important that we just understand that we need to be able to take our attention from all of these external sources like it is today because of technology and whatever else. And we need to bring that internally to just sit and feel for a second. The same way that entrepreneurs, I think, should sit and think and not do anything for periods of time. I think that every human should sit and just feel their body, like feel what's going on in your stomach, feel what's going on in your lungs, feel what's going on through the rest of your chain. Like body scan meditations I find are really good for this, where you start from your head or your feet and you just make your way up the chain, just literally just feeling like, where's there tension in my body? Where are there other sensations? Are these good feelings? Are these bad feelings? And just kind of asking yourself these questions to basically come up with a checklist through your body to understand yourself better.
Yeah. No, I love that point, because I always say to everyone, that time on your own, like you said, if it's understanding your body, but also understanding your mind, just to go into a room, take a few hours for yourself. The ideas that come into your head from a business point of view, you can't get them surrounded by people. But there's so many people in the world who seem unable to spend time on their own now.
Yeah, it's really tough, man. I mean, I don't know if it's because of what's going on in the world, if that has been a problem all throughout life, that people can't really sit with themselves, but it is the case today. And I think that people really just need to take the time to just sit and be still, like just stop worrying about things for just 5 minutes. Like if you stop for 5 minutes, you're going to be all right. And I often have to tell myself that. I find myself going from thing to thing. Oh, I got this thing on the schedule, this thing on the schedule, and just never take the time to stop. But those are the times that I find myself, if I do that for a while, I find myself just decreasing in my performance. I decline and I don't feel as good. And because I don't feel as good, then my performance declines even more. So it's just so important to understand that if you give yourself the time to really recharge mentally and physically, it's going to lead to the outcomes that you want.
Yeah. It's like when people panic. There's a good friend of mine, very successful businessman. He says, whenever anything goes wrong, he says to himself, is this going to kill me? And if he thinks it's not going to kill me, he goes, not really a problem then, is it?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And looking now, you run the coaching business. What key things do you think that early career in athletics instilled in you that's really helped you on your journey, not athletically, but in terms of business?
That's a good question. So I think that as athletes in general, we're really good at following structure. We're really, really good at being at this place at a certain time, eating this meal right before going to training. And I had a lot of coaches who would chew me up if I was 1 minute late. If I wasn't like 5 minutes early, then I was late. So just being able to follow a rigid structure is really important, I think, for anything you want to do in life, because without the structure, then you don't have discipline. Without the discipline, you're not getting those daily actions done. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that I got from being an athlete. But on the other side of things, I wasn't really good at creating my own schedule and creating my own structure. Yeah. So that's something that I had to learn over time, was that, sure, I can follow something, but can I create it? And that's what I think ultimately led to me having the success that I do today, is because I learned how to do that. Still working on it for sure. But once I create a structure for myself, I get a lot done. Yeah. And the times that, even on days where maybe I kind of half have a structure and I kind of leave it up to chance a little bit, I just don't perform nearly or produce nearly as well as when I just set out everything I'm going to do that day. I know exactly what the objectives are, and I just really make sure I have a clear picture of how that day is going to look.
Yeah. I say to everyone, it's that routine, consistency, and discipline. I honestly don't believe any human being can thrive without routine. You know, you've got to, these people that are constantly chopping and changing their routine, there's got to be a structure of waking up at a time, going to bed at a time. Even from relationships and stuff, your life has to follow a routine, because that's how we are intrinsically made.
Definitely.
So we've covered the business aspects there. Now, let's loop around. Right, bang on trend at the minute, because the Olympics are on, but you are making a return to athletics.
Yes,
You're going for LA 2028 Olympics.
Yes, sir.
Fill us in on the ambition and fill us in on what the next 4 years has in store to achieve that dream.
Yeah, so it's always been a dream of mine to compete at the highest stage. When I was younger, it was the NBA, but then my dreams kind of got shot down by how college athletics went, how college basketball went. Had a coach and didn't really have a good relationship with him, so that was kind of tough. But that's when I found high jump, and I was really good at that. And it didn't require me to have a team or a coach. It was really all predicated on my performance. And I really enjoyed that. I really appreciated the fact that everything was in my own hands. And so since then, then, it's been a huge learning experience to just understand how to optimize myself to make these little tiny incremental improvements. So for the last few years, it's really been focused on business. It's really been focused on getting myself to a level of financial state, and obviously like getting security there to be able to now be like, okay, I have more free time. I have the ability to not be stressed out about my business 24/7. So now I'm going to go and do this seriously. So I'm going out to work actually with one of the best coaches in the game. I don't know if we have any track and field viewers, but if we do, they'll probably know the name Jeremy Fisher. So I'm going out to San Diego this year to work with him, a couple training partners. And yeah, the next 4 years, I'm just going to be locked in. I mean, of course, still working on the business, still growing that. But I think I've gotten it to a point now where I'm able to really focus on other things like high jump and really pour into them in the way that's necessary for them to really get me to where I want to go.
So we mentioned the financial stability there. These next 4 years aiming for the Olympics, how much of that will need to be self-funded?
Most of it, honestly, depending on how well I'm able to do and get like certain marks, achieve certain jump heights. Track and field isn't really the most well-funded sport, especially in America, in the Western Hemisphere. It didn't always used to be like that, but for whatever reason, track viewership has just gone down dramatically in the West. So yeah, it takes a lot to really make any substantial amount of money for track and field. So the business is really going to be fueling a lot of my efforts, and it's going to be personally funded.
And across the US, do you think in the track and field that there is a benefit for those athletes coming through, those young athletes from the wealthier backgrounds and more prosperous backgrounds? Is there a lot of self-funding going on at an early age?
There definitely is, for sure. If you have the capital to invest in the right coaches, the right, obviously, equipment, even training facilities sometimes if your school doesn't really have those things, because a lot of these schools, they oftentimes don't even have certain coaches for specific events. They oftentimes don't have specific, like for high jump, not every school will have a high jump mat and the bar that you jump over, the standards that hold them up. So being a little bit more financially well off, you can find those things. You could pay for the facilities, pay for the coaches, whatever else you need. So I think it definitely gives you a leg up. Now, I think sometimes what comes with that is a little bit of complacency for some people. So, it's pros and cons, because the person who really wants to make it, who comes from nothing and wants to make a name for themselves, they might sometimes be more driven than the kid who has everything and doesn't really have to do anything to really be successful.
100%. And what's generated that? We talked about hunger there, but now you've got the successful business. You're obviously 10 years out of college. Where's this hunger come from now to do this big push for the Olympics?
For me, it's just maximizing my potential. Yeah. I think my biggest fear is growing old without really, really experiencing what it's like to step into my full potential. That really scares me, to be honest.
That one, didn't it?
Yeah. That truly, I think, is my biggest fear, whether it's in athletics or in relationships or in any area of life.
I mean, it's in life. It's like, if I finish a day and you don't believe that you've got the most out of that day, my anxiety takes over, mate.
Yeah.
Because I think it doesn't matter what other people say. I know in my heart that today I've been fucking useless.
Exactly.
Like, I've not done what I was put on this earth to do today.
Exactly.
And I wasted a day. And I love those charts where you actually see that. I know it's all a bit morbid, this, but you see that almost countdown to life, and you've got to make the most of this.
Yeah, you got to make the most of it. So I think that's what's truly driving me. I mean, as I said before, I've always been in love with just optimizing my body and seeing what it can do. And I think track and field is one of the best ways to do that, because you have actual measurements. Like in basketball, sure, you can score a certain amount of points, get certain stats, but you don't have, there's so many variables at play. But in high jump, it's just like, you do the same run up, you jump over the same height of bar, and you just aim to clear higher and higher. It's like very simple, and it's a very clear indicator of whether you're getting better or not. Yeah. So that's also why I like business too, because like you get more clients, you make more money. It's an indicator of whether you're actually improving.
There's two things I love about track and field as well. And the first one is the transparency of it, in that if we look at a basketball team and NFL team, there's an element of coaches selection there, particularly at a young age. If you fit the mold, you're more likely to take the team you develop. In track and field, there's complete transparency. Like you said, there's no one's opinion over who's jumped higher.
No.
That mandate. And the second one, I think the Olympics, I know some people, like you said about track and field, I think people have lost love with some of these events a bit. I don't think the viewing figures are what they were. But when you look at the Olympics, if we look at team sports, you can play at 70, 80% that day and realistically you get a bit lost in the crowd. You've got the team support you. But you take that 100 metres, for example, those 8 guys in that final, they've got one shot to perform. There's not even a culmination of 4 years, probably 10, 12, their entire lifetime. And that moment, you've got to perform.
Yeah, Usain Bolt, I'm going to butcher this quote, but he's known for saying something about how he's trained for X amount of hours to run 9 seconds, his world record in the 100 meters. So, yeah, a lot goes into it, man. It's crazy how much we do for these short little competitions in track and field. But at the end of the day, it's worth it. I mean, I think that once you see that the journey, I mean, as corny as this is and cliche as this is, the journey is really where the fulfillment comes from. And then the outcomes, the achievements just come as a result of that. When you really embody that, I think that you just live a more fulfilled life overall, and like you can actually get to your goals quicker if you really focus and be present in the journey itself.
100%. In order for you to reach the LA Olympics, what will the next 4 years need to look like? What are those sort of check marks along the way that you'll have to tick off? Yeah,
so there's a certain height that I need to achieve. So the way that the Olympics works is that you either need to hit the automatic qualifier, which is 2:33 or so. That's what it's been typically, and that's like 7-8 or so for the American viewers. Right now, my highest is 220 meters. That's about 2.5. So incrementally, I need to see myself improving that mark, getting to closer and closer to that automatic qualifier. But there's another way that you can actually achieve the standard is that you go by their point system. So essentially what that looks like is a certain amount of points that is given to you based on your performances at certain meets and how you place at those certain meets. So you can actually jump, let's say, 225 or 226 consistently and end up making an Olympic team.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that journey over the next 4 years, and hopefully I'll be tuning in LA and seeing you win the gold.
Absolutely.
So Stefan, it's been a pleasure catching up with you today. I really enjoyed our conversation. Before we let you go, can I grab off you 3 top tips for someone looking to set up a super successful online coaching business?
Sure. Yeah. I think number 1, focus on yourself. Don't focus on the noise all outside of you, your parents, your girlfriend, even your friends. Just focus on yourself. Be in tune with yourself about what you want, what you desire. Get really clear on your purpose and just execute from there. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'd say, is build structure. I think that's the challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs I see, is that their days are just so unstructured, no routine, like we talked about. Just bringing that level of structure to your life is going to allow you to take that belief, take that vision, and really craft that into day-to-day actions that are going to get you a little bit closer every single day to your vision. And then lastly, again, another cliche, just don't give up. When you give up is when you lose. Otherwise, you don't lose. You can't lose the game if you don't give up. So just keep on going forward. Just understand that all the answers are right in front of you. And you just have to be open to seeing what is the next thing that you need to solve, the next thing that you need to overcome to pass that level, to pass that barrier, and get to the next level.
I love it. Brilliant. Well, Stefan, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. I can't wait to watch your journey over the next 4 years towards the Olympics. To all our viewers, thank you for joining us for another episode of Raising the Barr. We've got some amazing guests coming up for you over the next few weeks, so please remember to like and subscribe wherever you consume the podcast. Thanks for joining us.